From the KSL Broadcast House, this is Sunday Edition with Doug Wright.
And a good morning to you. Welcome to Sunday Edition. This week, we're going to dig into the possible reasons why Americans seem to be losing trust in our U.S. institutions. Plus, what's being done at the state level when it comes to gun safety laws and school safety. Plus, the price of gas is dropping in our neighboring states, but not so much here in the Beehive State. And could a solution involve Utah's gas tax? That's all coming up. Joining me right now on the show is Rick Larsen, President and CEO of the Sutherland Institute. And Rick, I so appreciate you joining us today. When I saw the Gallup polling numbers on our American institutions, I was just shocked. And we were talking prior to going on the air that it wasn't all that long ago. We were all just appalled that Congress only had a 17% approval rating, and now it's a 7% approval rating. We'll run through what some of the numbers are, but over at Sutherland Institute, what is your first blush reaction to this poll?
Well, the first blush is this is more than a number. This is a serious trend. These institutions, and we refer to those broadly, people may be saying, so what counts as an institution? But in general, these are the formative structures in our society. So an eroding trust in those really equates to an eroding trust in each other.
I mentioned one of the reasons I wanted to talk to Sutherland. We could get a political point of view, we could get a religious point of view, we could get a social point of view, but at Sutherland, we kind of get the umbrella over all of that. So I'm very, very interested in your take on this. And first of all, let's talk about government. Supreme Court, 25%, and they're at the top of the heap. Presidency at 23%, and the Congress, as I've already mentioned, at 7%. This was a little bit of a shock, too, because nobody fared really well in this by any means. But church and organized religion is at 31%. Let's talk about that for just a moment. I've never seen that number that low.
No, and again, that's concerning as well, because my friend Yuval Levin, we've interviewed him a few times, and he's written brilliantly on this subject. And one of the reasons that is of such great concern is faith as an institution is a formative institution. And by that I mean we shape our behavior based on expectations. In other words, I'm a faithful member of a congregation. I'm expected to behave a certain way. I expect myself to behave a certain way. And that creates continuity and trust within communities. And if you eliminate the trust and the adherence to those norms, it becomes very difficult for people to know what to expect of one another, and then we're in this cycle of always looking to prove ourselves right. See, it doesn't work anymore, and everyone's corrupt, and these institutions are falling apart, and we in essence make it become true.
When we talk about politics, we talk about religion, it goes into the media. And I saw the newspaper numbers, and newspapers are a little interesting to talk about right now because they're on their own personal crisis and tectonic shift that's going on. But 16% when it comes to newspapers. And then, of course, business is a very, very part. I mean, the cornerstone, you think of all of the organizations and institutions that are formed around business, chambers of commerce and everything else. But big business, 14%. And then when we get into the local criminal justice, or criminal justice generally in America, that too is only 14%. I guess I could ask the question, as you peruse the poll from Gallup, did anything kind of walk away at least unscathed?
Well, the couple of things that rated the highest are the military and small business, interestingly enough. If you look at those, again, through this lens of formative institutions, what do small business and the military have in common? Well, there's a certain level of sacrifice and self-reliance and expected behaviors within those. Mm-hmm. People work hard when they start their own business. They take some control of their future in their own hands. In the military, people are serving, they're sacrificing, they are there on behalf of others. Those are among the elements that are being perceived as going away in all of these other institutions, the 14 or 15 others that are all declining. Based on bad behavior, we hold on to those as examples of good behavior, something we're proud of as Americans, as citizens, as neighbors. So there's an embedded factor of behavior within these institutions if you look across the winners, the two winners and the losers.
When you think about that too, you know, many of us know some of our local business people, small mom and pop businesses, and many of us either have friends or neighbors or relatives that serve in the military. So I suppose some of that makes sense. It's closer to home. The lack of faith in one another, kind of the American populace as an institution, that distresses me, I think, more than anything.
Yeah, it's a tremendous concern because as Charles Murray, another scholar and economist, has noted, among the factors that create cohesion in society are things like faith in a higher power, a work ethic, but a trust in one another. That ability to at least look down your street and say, I know my neighbors, I trust them, I could rely on them in a time of need. You hope family has that consistency, even better if it extends to your neighborhood, even better a full community and a state. And we're just wearing away at the edges of that expanding trust.
Where do we start to repair this? What is it going to take? Now, this is a big philosophical question that we've left about a minute for, but where do we start? Each and every person has a dog in this fight and a responsibility.
Yeah, short term and long term. Short term, do not underestimate the value of what occurs in our own homes. Talking to our families about what is happening and our view of it, and seeking an understanding of how institutions form, shape, and protect us. So start very local, and then there's a very painful long term. We have got to resume teaching history, civics, and citizenship in public education. That erosion that began in the late 50s and in the early 1960s, and I'm not attributing reasons, I'm not attributing nefarious intent, but for whatever reason, we don't discuss the function of government and citizenship beginning at K through 12. We've got to resume that because we're basically creating very educated young minds who don't understand the nation they live in.
It is shocking when you see some of the numbers that come out of our high schools on what they do not know about our government, what they do not know, even about our geography, for heaven's sake, and some of the founding principles of our great, great country.
Yeah, it is shocking.
Oh, it is amazing.
And correctable.
Thank heavens it is correctable. Rick, I really appreciate you joining us on the program today.
Thank you, Doug.
It's always a pleasure to chat with you. And we have much more coming up on Sunday Edition. We're going to talk about Utah, gun laws, and safety of our kids in school. Stay with us. And welcome back. I'm here with State Senator Kathleen Riebe, who is also a teacher, to talk about gun safety bills and what lawmakers are looking at when it comes to school safety in light of recent school shootings. And it's a great pleasure to have you here, Kathleen. Thank you so very, very much. And Senator, as you look at what has been tackled on Capitol Hill, and as we speak, even things that have been tackled back in Washington, D.C., President Biden has yet to sign what has been passed by the Senate and the House. Are we making progress, in your opinion, especially as a legislator and as a teacher? Because the focus is safety in schools.
Well, the Safe Communities bill is going to provide a lot of funding for our schools to bring back some community health issues and to help schools with those kinds of things. It's also going to bring back some red flag laws. As our state, though, we tried to pass 5 bills last year that dealt with some of these things. 2 of them failed for red flag laws and gun safety and background checks. And then we also had some successes with SROs and trying to train them well so that they did a good job.
I hear the term hardening schools. And on one hand, I totally get it. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, it kind of breaks my heart. And I'll just kind of open up here. I went to Skyline High School. Didn't graduate from there. I graduated from Granite. But I went to Skyline, and there were so many entrances, egress, ingress, I mean, all over the place. Big open places, multiple buildings, and you could walk in any room. It saddens me to think that we are at a state now in our society, and that school and so many others are being redesigned and rebuilt and hardened right now, that basically we just funnel everybody through that hardened environment through one safe gate. It's hard for me to reconcile that we are at that point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you think about all the school shootings, most of those kids had access to that school. So they would have gotten in through that gate regardless of how hardened you make our schools. So we are really trying to focus on creating better environments. Safe UT app had 19 reports of a planned school attack. So that's really concerning. And if you're going to harden schools, how is that going to prevent you from having a student come into the school? So I don't know if that's the right way to go. I think that we really need to start working on our communities and making them more inclusive and providing people with the help they need before they get to this point where they're breaking.
As a legislator and an educator, is it frustrating to you that so many seem to have just dug in? Absolutely. I've done a little history on this, and I mean, the NRA been around since the 1870s. Back, they've worked with major legislation in the country in the past to get Tommy guns and things of that nature off the streets in the 1920s and 1930s. They would sit down with legislators, and it seems now that the sides are so entrenched. And you're lucky if you have a conversation at all, much less any real, and I hesitate to use the word compromise, but yet our great nation, our great republic is built on reasonable compromise. And does it frustrate you how entrenched we seem to be today?
Yeah, you know, frequently when I ask my peers on the other side, I said, why are we running this bill? Why are we talking about this? And frequently they'll say, you know, oh, I have to cater to my base, or I have to, you know, cater to this faction. And I'm like, well, we really need to start thinking about the broad spectrum of people and not be so far to the left or far to the right, because that's not going to get us anywhere. I do think we need to compromise. It's really important. They haven't had, every week we've had four mass shootings every week this year. That's devastating. Devastating.
It's just startling to all of us. And even those who are entrenched say, yes, I'm startled too, but it's all because of this. And some of them, honestly, I'm going to offend a few folks here, I guess, but they're pretty simplistic answers. I mean, this is a very complex thing. There have been changes in our society, changes in our access, changes in attitudes, everything. In just family structure, societal structure. And, you know, it was President Lincoln that said, as our case is new, so we must think anew. And I don't see a whole lot of new thinking.
I agree. You know, assault weapons are just not something that we should be having commonplace in our communities. And when we look at all the school shootings, that's mostly what they're using. These red flag laws, they need to be thought of, and they need to be pushed forward, because they really do mean something in our communities to make them safer.
Let's talk about the red flag laws. A lot of us, and myself included, I'm kind of a privacy freak, and you know, I'm almost giving up on some things. It's just, you know, you become a dinosaur if you don't accept a few things, and I'm fossilizing as we speak. But the issue with the red flag laws, when you look at all of the signals that are out there, and for anybody who's kind of been just even casually keeping an eye on person A over here, they'll go, something ain't right.
Yeah, we just had a public education hearing just last week, and we had somebody from the state school board talk about how we can start using social media and start mining some of that information, because majority of these incidents were talked about before they had actually happened. So I agree with you. Privacy is something that I hold near and dear, but if you're going to be talking on social media and sharing these things, it's out there, and we should use that to our advantage. So
recently we had the case of somebody who just barely turned 18, walks in and does buy an AR-15, has an abnormal amount of ammunition at such a young age. We seem to have kind of milestones for becoming an adult and for getting full freedoms in this country. And, you know, you hear the same old arguments just over and over again. But boy, you know, sometimes I wonder, 18 years of age, there are certain alcohols they can't buy. And I know the number one thing you hear is, well, they can join the military and fight for our freedoms, and they can use that gun over there. But should they have it in their locker at home?
I don't think so. And I think that we really need to start looking at how we can better protect our kids. You know, when you were a kid and when I was a kid, it was a different world. You know, I had a job at 16. I could ride my bike for miles. We don't really let our kids do that anymore. So the thoughts that we had back then aren't really the same way they are now. Kids, I think, are a little bit more immature longer, and it's a harder world, and things come at you fast. So to find that balance of how we're going to take care of our kids and protect them, maybe we should be raising the age, and maybe we should think about, you know, let's have our kids keep young while they're young and keep them safe.
We're out of time, but just any final quick thought. What do you anticipate? Are you looking toward the next legislative session here in the state of Utah?
Yeah, there has been an influx of quite a few gun safety bills, and I think people are changing their minds a little bit. I think Safe UT app has done a tremendous thing, and when you look at the school board dashboard of how our people feel about their schools, most people really feel safe in their schools.
Senator Riebe, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you
for joining us today on Sunday Edition, and we will be right back. Gas prices are coming down across the country, but here in the Beehive State, they remain near record highs. Here to talk with us about the impact of the gas prices on Utahns, as well as a recent ruling on Utah's Inland Port Authority from the Supreme Court, the Utah House of Representatives Majority Leader Mike Schultz. And Representative Schultz, thank you for joining us. I couldn't resist. I saved a picture for Representative Schultz that was the last time I filled up my truck, and it actually stopped. It cut me off at $175.
That's amazing.
This is and I don't want you to think I'm driving that big of a gas hog, but it's a 6-cylinder EcoBoost F-150. Gets about 20 miles to the gallon.
Most popular truck in America.
Exactly. Yeah. And holy cow, $175.
It's bad.
That was, that was breathtaking.
Yeah.
And what's the skinny? Why is Utah's, it's gone down maybe a hair here and there, but why are we kind of setting the pace?
Well, if you look, in Utah, generally speaking, we're always a little bit slower in following the national average. So usually if the national average goes up, Utah's a little bit behind, and vice versa. It generally takes a little bit longer to come down. And I don't know exactly why that is in Utah, Doug, but I think it's important to point out it's only came down a little bit.
Yeah, that's right.
Nationwide. That's right. I mean, a little bit. We're talking, cents, not dollars. We need it to come down dollars is what we need to happen.
I remember years ago when it went to $4.29 a gallon, which was breathtaking.
2008.
Then Governor Huntsman and I were talking on the air on the old Doug Wright radio program, and I said, Governor, what's going on? And I'll never forget his response. He looked at me and he said, you know, Doug, my family is reputed to really know something about the petrochemical business. We can't figure it out. And I thought, wow.
Yeah, they can't figure it out.
And at that time, it was taking about $129 to fill my tank. Yeah. So, you do ask yourself, and I've joked for years, I just don't understand the whole business. I mean, some things tend to be, fairly obvious. I mean, if there's a war, or there's a fire or a spill or something. But what is causing the high prices from the legislative point of view as you look at it and try to analyze it? What is happening?
Well, I think this one's an easy one, Doug, and certainly the war in Ukraine has had an impact on it. But the biggest impact has been the policies coming out of the Biden administration. The first day in office, he campaigned on war on energy in the United States. First day in office, executive orders came out of his office that had large impacts on the oil industry. In fact, President Biden issued more executive orders than any other president in the first few months in ofse.
The Keystone Pipeline.
Keystone Pipeline's one of those.
That.
Yes, Keystone Pipeline was just one. That was only one. And that was a big one. But there were others as well that implemented additional restrictions on oil production in the United States, or just made it harder as a whole. And one of those executive orders was a moratorium on no more drilling on federal land in the United States. Now that, we, as a state of Utah, took that to court and won and got that decision reversed. But still, to get the permits to do it is very difficult.
Is there anything, anticipating that hopefully this trend will continue, of going down at least a little bit, but is there something that the Utah State Legislature, because we see differences even in the state, what the costs are, and then we go to neighboring states and we see them considerably lower, but is the legislature considering anything?
We've talked about a couple things. I think what it's fair to say is the legislature wants to do something, but we want to make it more long-term. Doug, you're aware that the legislature's reduced taxes in the state of Utah the last 3 years in a row. We're going to do that again this legislative session. I think it's important that we take a look at the budget holistically, decide how we best do that, and I hope that we're able to do it again and actually make a larger impact on Utahns this upcoming session.
Every time I've tried to seriously whine about the taxes, and when it's not hard to do on anything, but you look at our gas taxes, at least they are related to something. And we are paying for the maintenance and the infrastructure of the state. So even me and others who are a little tax phobic, you start going, well, you know, I don't want to clip that too much.
You don't want to clip it too much, because if we clip that, we are taking money away from the roads of the state. Constitutionally, the gas tax has to go to support the roads in the state, and so then you start looking, okay, if we clip that, which projects are we going to not do?
And we're already clipping it with better gas mileage, more fuel-efficient cars, even electric cars and things of that nature. Before we run out of time, I'd like to just quickly shift gears and talk about the inland port, and especially the Supreme Court decision that it is within Utah's Constitution to do.
And I hope with this new court ruling we can put this behind us and move forward with the inland port. The inland port has a statewide impact, Doug, and a statewide benefit to the citizens of the state as a whole. The goal is to get more trucks off of the roads in Utah. Interesting statistic I heard today. Across the nation, the national average, 12% in other states are truck traffic on roads. Utah's 24%. We're the crossroads of the West. Almost 40% of the GDP, of our nation's GDP, flows through Utah, whether it's on rail, whether it's on trucks, whether it's by air. But being the crossroads of the West, we're there. And it doesn't take long to get on the freeway and look, see how many trucks you pass. The goal is to reduce that and get more of it on trains. That's beneficial to Utah. If we can have a satellite port in Box Elder County that can capture all of the agricultural products that are grown in Idaho, Montana, Colorado that come through Utah, and get it on a train and send it to Long Beach versus shipping it all the way through our state. I think that's much better for Utahns.
Representative Schultz, thank you. There's so much more we can talk about, some of the tax revenue issues, and we'll get into that later. But thank you so much for being part of Sunday Edition today.
Thanks for having me, Doug. Appreciate you.
Real pleasure to have you on the show. And that does it for our edition of Sunday Edition today. We hope you'll join us again next week. And music and the spoken word, that's coming up next.